to really shed light on this McCabe, Rosenstein coup d'etat thing, who is the best guy you could get or gal? And if I searched the Milky Way, I could only find one guy, and that's Sheriff David Clarke, America's Sheriff, who is joining us now. Sheriff Clarke, great to have you, sir.
John, thanks, and hello to your listeners.
I mean, I'm watching 60 Minutes, right? And it's like they were attempting a coup against a duly elected president with wires and based on they don't like his policies. And, like, where's the outrage?
It's incredible, it really is. But all it really does is it reaffirms what we've already known, what we've already learned about what was going on in the Department of Justice in the early days of the Trump administration, and even prior to that, after he won the election. You're right. The lack of, I don't know, outrage, or I can't think of another word. It's really astounding. I mean, these are the things that have brought down other countries when it goes on. This is like a banana republic, for heaven's sakes. I mean, they can't even get, in Venezuela, they can't even get Maduro out of there, but they're trying like hell. And the same thing was going on here in the United States in a different fashion, which is why people refer to it as a silent coup, but that's exactly what was going on. Mueller doesn't care. Nobody cares in Washington, D.C. The New York Times doesn't care because it was against a guy that they wanted to get rid of anyway. But I always say when this kind of stuff happens that the reason why people, even if you don't like President Trump, if it happens, if they can do it to him, they can do it to anybody. They can do it to their guy next time. And it causes the American people to lose faith in their government. I've said this for the last several years. Our government is corrupt at the highest levels. And that's why I said all this story did on the 60 Minutes, and McCabe's book was reaffirmed. I see he's trying to walk it back now, but it's too late.
I mean, what about Rod Rosenstein? Okay, this guy's a deputy attorney general. He gives the letter. He's the one that gives the letter to President Trump saying it's time to fire Comey. The guy can't function his job. He's tarnished. Trump does it. Then he turns around. He tries to get Trump to hire Robert Mueller, his buddy, as FBI director. Trump meets him. He didn't think much of him. He's like, yeah, this is just another George Bush guy. Probably the only George Bush guy the president didn't hire, right? He just didn't like him, so he doesn't hire him. Then he turns around, he makes him special counsel. Then he turns around, he says he's going to wear a wire. That breaks into Times. Then he denies it. Now McCabe is saying, no, it came up 2 times, and he said, no, I'm serious. And like, I just cannot believe that this is not one of the biggest scandals in what, the past decade. And there's crickets, nothing. You can't find an article on this.
The worst part of it, people would think, is that it happened, but I think the worst part of it is that nothing will happen to these individuals. They knew it at the time. They still know it now. That's the closed nature of Washington, D.C. Everybody protects each other. If you're a member of the club, since the president is not a member of the club, they're not going to circle the wagons and protect him like they did Obama during situations where, there was some question about what he was doing, whether what he was doing or his Justice Department, like tapping the AP wires phones. I think it was AP reporters' phones, like Fast and Furious, things like that. So these guys know that the rules are different. I said at the time, and I think that story broke about a year ago with Rosenstein and potentially the 25th, executing the 25th Amendment and wearing a wire. And I remember he played it off as if it was a joke.
Right.
Not many people took it seriously. And at the time, I called him a snake.
Right.
I've never met that guy, but I wouldn't trust him as far as I can throw him. I'd never turn my back to him. He's one of these guys, he's got that look, that unassuming look. He shows up like looking like Mr. Peepers, but the guy he's a cold-blooded snake. And it's about time that he's gone. He should have been gone a long time ago. It's one of the personnel moves. But the president had his hands tied a little bit, because if you start firing all these people at the same time under this situation with this Mueller investigation, he's going to have a political battle on his hands that he may not survive. So you have to approach this thing very strategically, and he is. It's just unfortunate it has to be that way. But again, this is Washington, D.C. What we're seeing right now is Washington, D.C. It's corrupt. It's very incestuous, and the American people should not have any faith in our government at this time.
I tell you, Sheriff Clarke, I agree with your assessment on Rod Rosenstein. I think he's a rat weasel. I don't believe a word he says, and I don't trust him. And I got to tell you, I was at a White House press briefing at the Rose Garden. I'm trying to figure out. I've been to many of them. I think it was when Brett Kavanaugh was getting sworn in. I think it was that day. The president was there, and the press is gathered, and Rosenstein walks in the room. He thinks he's like a rock star. You know, he's like shaking hands, like down the rope line with the media. Like he's actually shaking everybody's hand. And I'm like, just sit down, because, you know, I don't believe a word you say. I think you're a liar and a rat. And look, a lot of these people have not served the president in any meaningful way or his agenda. I mean, for instance, right? Mark Short, who is an open borders Chamber of Commerce Republican who screwed up everything except the tax cut, couldn't get the wall done, had to deal with omnibus in there. Now, he shows up as chief of staff for Mike Pence. I mean, Sheriff, these are just head scratchers. And you go off every day and you say, you know, when are we going to get people in there that actually believe in the president's agenda that can get it done? Certainly it's not Rod Rosenstein. You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network. We're with Sheriff David Clarke. He is a senior contributor with America First Policies. He's also what we call America's Sheriff. And you go to his website and get more information there at americasheriff.com, americasheriff.com. Sheriff, let's switch topics. Let's get to the wall or the barrier. The president signing the bill last week. Everybody hated the bill, but the national emergency he's declared in order to get access to the $8 billion has refocused everybody's attention on that. And then 16 Democratic states file a lawsuit, including Virginia, which is nowhere near the border, in order to stop it. And the president pretty confident he'll get a fair ruling with SCOTUS. What do you make of this whole thing?
Yeah, he will. There's no doubt about this. But, like the travel ban, it's going to take some time as it works its way through the courts at a very snail's pace. That's the thing that frustrates me, really, about the court system, circuit court, the federal appeals court, and then Supreme Court. It takes forever. And it's one of those times when I like that phrase, justice delayed is justice denied. The president is on solid footing on declaring a national emergency. People may disagree with it politically, and they can do that. That's fair game in our political environment. But to try to stop him using the legal system is doing nothing more than trying to harass and delay this president from carrying out his constitutional duty to protect this country. He took an oath to do it. Though, like you said, of those 16 states, I mean, other than states like California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, most of those other states don't even have standing, not only because they're not on the border, but the other reasons they don't have standing is because they're raising a constitutional issue that's for the Congress to sue about. They're saying that the president is exceeding his authority to take money and move it around, so on and so forth. Congress can file a lawsuit if they want to on that. Congress can say, no, that's for us to do. But these states have no standing whatsoever. They know they have no standing, and that's why I said this is designed to do nothing more than delay, stall, and harass this president from carrying out his duty. So it is going to happen. But again, everything in Washington, D.C. takes forever. And so this is what we're going to have to put up with. The president knew that when he had his press conference, I think it was last week, where he announced that he had to sign the bill. And his hands were tied on that. And I say shame not on the Democrats for that continuing resolution, shame on the GOP. For not doing more fighting. They actually sent a signal to me that they're really not behind the president on this border initiative, this border security, and they demonstrated that by not fighting more to put that money that the president asked for in that bill and to hold firm. They could have held firm so that the president wouldn't have had to shut down the government. The GOP and the Congress should have had the courage to stall and delay and shut down the government, not putting forth, especially in the Senate, not putting forth that craptacular bill for the president to have to sign. sometimes in politics, John, you know this, many of your listeners know it, you have to live to fight another day. Going into another shutdown wasn't going to advance anything. It just wasn't. It wasn't in the best interest of the country. Look, when you're a member of Congress, you can do things in the best interest of your congressional district, which are very small, or maybe even your state if you're a U.S. Senator. When you're a president, sometimes you have to put the politics aside and do what's in the best interest of the United States of America and its citizens, even if it's going to hurt you politically with your party. And that's what he did. That's a trait of leadership. He was willing to do that, get knocked around by some of these hair-on-fire people like Ann Coulter and others, and there were other people telling him he shouldn't sign it. I didn't want him to sign it, but I knew, in the back of my mind, I knew he's got to do what's in the best interest of the country. And shutting down the government again is not going to get him his $5.7 billion. So let's get out of this rut that we're in, this stalemate. This is how the president's thinking. Let's get out of this stalemate, and let's try to get this done, get this country moving again. Let's try to get this done another way. Great strategic chess move on his part.
Look, I don't think he had any choice but to sign it. We were not happy with the bill itself. There was a lot of things in there that basically gave more rights to illegals, more protection, more money. I thought it was crazy, but it's also only for 9 months, and these all can aspire, can get redone. Government shutdown made no sense, but I agree with you, Sheriff Clarke. I think the president was sold out in the negotiation by rat weasels on the Republican negotiating committee who didn't get a damn thing. I mean, they got very minimal money for the wall, and then along with that, they had to make all sorts of protections for people that come into the country illegally: lawyers, bus tickets, food, clothing, shelter, housing, food stamps. I mean, it's unbelievable. And then the provision of basically you have a minor child, you're in, doesn't matter. That increases the whole human trafficking episode. That made no sense. So I blame the Republican negotiators. I mean, they handed him a bill at the final minute. What was he going to do? You can't shut the government down. That's a failure. So once again, he's sold out by his own party that actually, to me, they're negotiating this and they don't even believe in his policies. I don't know how you go forward. This guy's been up against so much, Sheriff Clarke. He doesn't even have people in his own West Wing that believe in his policies. I mean, it's 2 years in, it's incredible, isn't it?
It is. And Congress demonstrated once again, when I say Congress, I'm including both parties,
right,
that they are the broken branch. Congress demonstrated once again, they do not fix problems, they extend them out into the future, and that's what they did here. They did nothing on the visa program that's broken. They did nothing on the asylum program that's broken. They did nothing with DACA. They want this thing to just sit there. And you watch, John, that going into 2020, every one of those Democrats and Republicans that voted against the president will be running and raising money on border security. And it's the Republicans that should hang their head in shame. They will go out there in the next 18 months talking about, we need border security. We need border security. They're the ones that are responsible for this under the Constitution, forming rules on naturalization, and they won't do it. So these are the games that are played in Washington, D.C. President Trump needs more help. I knew, you knew, many of your listeners knew it's going to take several election cycles to drain this swamp. But until then, you got to take what you can. You have to take what you can at certain times, and like I said, you have to live to fight another day. You don't want to die on this hill if you're the president of the United States. You just can't. Absolutely.
I agree with you, Sheriff, 100%. I've only got about a minute here. Let me read two texts. Sean in Newport News, Virginia says, Sheriff Clarke needs to be careful, saying that he can trust Rosenstein as far as he can throw him. I bet the sheriff could throw Rosenstein pretty far. Sean in Newport News says, Sean, looking at the size of you, I guess he made that judgment. And let's see, Paul in Mechanicsville, Virginia says, totally agree with the sheriff. Sent you a text a long time ago that said Stevie Wonder could tell Rosenstein was a liar and a snake. Of course, Stevie Wonder, blind. Paul in Mechanicsville, Virginia. And Darlene in Washington, D.C. says, tell Sheriff Clarke we love him, but alas, the Cubs suck. Just want to read that also. So there's your three text, Sheriff. Darlene doesn't like the Cubs. I guess she's a Nationals fan. Sorry about that, Sheriff. We're out of time. See, as soon as you said you're a Cubs fan now, my listeners are on to you. So every time you come on, if your team's not winning, you're going to get blasted. So you just got to deal with it. John Fredericks Radio Network. Darlene says the Cubs suck. For more information, go to americasheriff.com. That's americasheriff.com. Sheriff Clarke, thanks for being with us. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.